All right, so here we actually don't have many, but I do think we have some interesting ones. We're going to start with the quarterback, which oddly here, probably the least interesting in this case, because it's Sean Mannion. He completed 12 of his 21 passes, that's 57.1%, 126 yards, didn't score a touchdown through 2 picks, 35.1 quarterback rating, and had a QBR of 24.4. His cap hit was only 735K, and I think you can say they got what they paid for there. So I think, yeah, we can get better than this, certainly. And I'm assuming that the most likely scenario is drafting a quarterback on day 3 as like the backup is concerned to compete with Jake Browning for that backup spot. But something I would be a little curious to see happen given the financials of things. Zimmer has always liked veteran backup quarterbacks, and they don't necessarily have the money to, well, acquire said veteran backup quarterback. So we might have to bite the bullet here and not have that. But I'm thinking most likely scenario is day 3 or undrafted kind of quarterback to compete with Jake Browning for the backup spot, given how cheap it could be or will be in this case. Then we go to receiver. There's only one, that's why I said receiver, and that is a one Laquan Treadwell. 16 targets, he caught 9 balls, 184 yards, 20.4 yards per reception, had 1 score, 8 first downs, and 11.5 yards per target. And depending on how cheap he is, we could potentially see Laquan back in 2020, which is ridiculous. But I don't think any of that contract would be guaranteed, and I don't think he'd be guaranteed a spot either. So it wouldn't be safe, that roster spot, and I don't entirely anticipate him back because I think we could, once again, get younger, cheaper, and potentially better there. Because Treadwell, a lot of what he does is in the run game. He's one of the better blocking receivers they have, but he's not giving us much here. He doesn't really separate. He's not really a great route runner. A lot of what he was supposed to do was like that physical Des Bryant kind of like, oh, he's a jump ball, trust it kind of guy. And then he started mistiming his jumps, and then nobody trusts him. So Treadwell, I think it wouldn't be ridiculous to see him come back on a 1-year, not guaranteed at all kind of deal. But I'm not really anticipating him back. Not shocked if he does, but I am certainly not anticipating him back because it appears they liked Hollins towards the end of last year. Olabisi Johnson should obviously, progress a little bit more. Chad Beebe as well is a guy they like, and I'm not thinking Treadwell really fits into this. And then we get to the backs, which is probably the most important part of this. And so, rushing, Amir Abdullah, 23 attempts, 115 yards, 5 yards an attempt. Didn't have a touchdown, at least, not rushing. He accounted for 4 first downs on the ground. He was targeted 21 times, caught 15 balls for 88 yards. That's 5.9 yards per reception, 79 yards after the catch. Had 1 score and 5 more first downs through the air. And Abdullah was also the kick returner, had 13, 325, 25 yards of return. His long was 38 and an all-purpose yardage of 528 yards. So I'm not really convinced Abdullah's back. This is another one where it's like if he's as cheap as he was last time because he took veteran minimum last season to be on this team. If he does that again, it wouldn't be too surprising to see him back, but I'm not entirely sure he gives us anything that we cannot replace. And what really that could just, kind of deal with is Mike Hughes in the returning game, how much they trust somebody else. Can they get somebody else reasonably or cheaply? A lot of what his value is probably comes from the kick returning aspect, and I think we can get better there. So I really don't think we need him back. It's not a necessity. And C.J. Ham is the other one. He only carried it 7 times for 17 yards, 2.4 yards per attempt. Didn't have a score, 2 first downs, and in the receiving game, oddly very productive for a fullback. 17 catches on 26 targets, 149 yards, 8.8 yards per reception, 125 yards after catch, and 1 score and 6 first downs. And the C.J. Ham could actually be a little bit tougher of a decision than meets the eye here, because he is a restricted free agent, which means they have to tender him to keep him around or match someone else's offer if you're not just going to normally extend him. So the first round tender would put him at 4.6 mil. Second round is 3.2. An original round he was undrafted, so you wouldn't get anything for this, but $2.1 million. And we could see Minnesota just match an offer here or just normally extend him just because of how the cap situation is. And it's interesting because you also have this same problem with Eric Wilson. And it's going to be interesting to see how they attack that, because they only have the 1.3 mil, which means that you can't really tender him at 4.6 or 3.2 if you're going to only have 1.3 mil. So obviously moves need to be made before they sign like anybody. I think we all know that. But I think Eric Wilson and C.J. Ham in specific, just because they are the restricted free agents, they're actually harder to pin down whether or not we should keep them or not, just because of the restricted free agent part. And it would not be great to lose C.J. Ham. I think he's done his role very well of what he was asked. I do think they should stop featuring him sometimes in the beginning of games, but that's a different story. And I don't know. I think they should keep him around. I'm just not sure if they can necessarily. But the one benefit here is I don't think anyone's really lining up to get C.J. Ham, just because he is a fullback. Not many teams carry the fullback anymore. So we could be looking at something where we can just normally just give him a normal extension and it won't be this much of a hassle, hopefully. Like your comments down below. Liking and subscribing always helps. Until next time, I bid y'all adieu.